Hi, welcome to today's episode or show of the Thrive with Lyme online summit. I am Elizabeth Elliott with Fusion Stretch and Wellness in Louisville, Kentucky. And today I want to welcome Liza Blaz with the Very Happy Stories podcast. She is the mom of how many kids? I forget, three? Two.
Two.
Two kids. And she is also a healing and empowerment coach for moms. So welcome. Thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. What?
Thank you so much for having me, Elizabeth.
You are so welcome. Tell me about your story with Lyme.
Okay. Um, my story actually is unique in that it really started with the journey of my kids. They both have kind of struggled with like mystery illness, mental health issues, psychiatric issues, even as a young child. Like even like right when my firstborn was born, her nervous system was off. And as they kind of progressed through the years in elementary school, they just kept getting progressively worse, mostly my firstborn, until things kind of like really fell apart from a mental health standpoint. My daughter, for example, has dealt with eating disorder,
Mhm.
joint pain, OCD, and at its worst, like suicidal ideation, hallucinations.
Mhm.
With my son, it was more like sudden panic, leg pain, joint pain, complaints, when he would be in basketball, like he couldn't complete the the sports, and just so many issues in school, learning disabilities. And then, when I thought it couldn't get any harder, both of my kids were diagnosed with Lyme and various co-infections, as well as brain inflammation and PANS. And so just recently, like a year ago, I actually tested myself because I've always had a sketchy medical background. I had an early stage breast cancer.
Mm.
I have Hashimoto. I've had plantar fasciitis, heart arrhythmia, all of these things. Um, and lo and behold, I also have active Lyme and Bartonella. So we are a whole family impacted by Lyme, including my husband.
So when you say your kids, what made you or where did you take to get them tested? Like, hey, my
Right.
kids have all these issues, or had you been doing a little bit of research first and thought, gosh, I need to look into this?
Oh
Or
gosh,
did
my
somebody
kids,
suggest it?
yeah. My kids had seen so many doctors. My son had his tonsils and adenoids removed. We went to a neurologist. We went to a psychiatrist. We went to a Chinese medicine doctor. Lo and behold, another mom came to me and pulled me aside at a holiday party. And she
Mhm.
basically said, I don't know if this is going to resonate with you or not, but your daughter really sounds like another teenage girl that I know. And that girl has Lyme disease. Lyme disease.
Wow.
I think it's possible. And kind of like my heart sank because I was like, I don't know. I just knew in the pit of my stomach that it could potentially be. So I went back to our Chinese medicine doctor. She practices traditional Chinese medicine, but she is a medical doctor. She is an MD. I went back to her and I said, my daughter's struggling so much psychiatrically. Do you think we should rule out Lyme? And she said, yes, we should. I have the IGeneX test in my office. I mean,
Oh,
she even had it and she didn't even like think to rule out Lyme. It was another mom. And so my daughter tested positive, and then I tested my son.
gotcha. Yeah, I mean it's you're lucky, I guess, that she even had the IGeneX, right, test available.
I
A lot
know.
of them, a lot of practitioners don't keep it around and they rely on that Western blot test.
Yes. And after I did the IGeneX test, I did go back to my pediatrician because I wanted like recommendations for like infectious disease doctors. And of course, the pediatrician ran the Western blot. And my daughter was positive on the initial screening, but then they said they had to run it again. That was just the screening, not the test. And she was negative on the test. So, there's that whole story too. So we realized early on that we couldn't go this traditional route. And we just started healing with that Chinese medicine doctor. Actually, we kind of did a lot of
Chinese
herbs, killing the load, detox, opening up, your detox pathways. We did a lot of that stuff.
So what sort of detoxification support did you use?
So she actually had us on glutathione.
Okay.
Through Research Nutritionals, I believe is the name. I can't remember. And some binders to even start, a particular supplement called Baluque, which was supposed to bust open biofilms, kind of like all the prep work. Detox the body. We were doing infrared sauna, Epsom salt baths, just kind of get stuff moving before we entered the kill phase. And we did start with antibiotics for my daughter. I didn't see any movement. But when we did change gears to work on the babesia through Mepron and also some herbs, then we started seeing more of her come back. I think it was just easier to kill off the babesia first.
So did any of this affect her ability to learn or engage at school? I know you said, when you think about, psychological issues, you can think about anxiety, but I know, or even learning challenges, right? You're anxious and you've got ruminating thoughts, or however that anxiety is showing up. It's definitely makes it more challenging, right?
Yeah.
To learn. And so was it impacting your kids? Was that something that you noticed at all?
So much. In fact, my son broke sooner to the pressure of not being able to participate cognitively at the level, even as early as like the second grade.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had to put him in a smaller school, and he definitely went through a lot of school refusal and, was diagnosed with ADHD and oppositional defiant disorder and dysgraphia and, a bunch of executive functioning disorders. My daughter was very good at masking. So she still, by the grace of God, was still getting, I think, even all A's.
Oh,
But
wow.
psychologically, she was not well. She actually started hallucinating.
Mm-hmm.
I think she just masked the whole time, and it really tore her apart internally. And she was even having certain episodes that looked like she was having seizures when it got so bad, but she was not having seizures. Her body started shutting down too. She was incapable of walking some days.
Mm-hmm.
So it just kind of manifested in different ways for both of my kids.
Okay. And, several of the folks that I have interviewed have talked about the inability to move or even change their clothes or brush their hair. A gal yesterday, you could physically see that she was having a hard time just getting her hand to her head, right?
Yeah.
Her kids are brushing her hair right now. So I know it's
Yeah.
very different for every individual. Another young gal is a gymnast, and she said aside from her non-epileptic seizures, she would have these tremors. They
Right.
always occurred at night, but it really has not impacted her life that much, except for these nightly tremors and twice a month an epileptic seizure.
Yeah.
And so, but she said surprisingly, she feels like her gymnastics has kept her going. She's had the energy for it, the strength for it, but she feels like that also helps to move, right? The lymph and
Sure.
it's that heavy sweating that keeps her feeling better. Mm-hmm.
That's great. That's wonderful.
So how old are your kids now?
17 and 14.
Okay.
And they're actually doing amazing. It's been a really difficult journey. It's one of those things. Our story includes, the psychiatric disorders. That's what kind of was our entryway into the world of Lyme. But on top of Lyme and a lot of co-infections, we also lived in mold. We had to go through the
Mm,
whole mold journey, remediating the house, plus remediating the body, that's what I say.
right.
That took a long time. We also ended up in the world of pandas. There was so much brain inflammation, and autoimmune encephalitis that my children just started shutting down from everyday living.
Mhm.
I couldn't even get my daughter out of the house many days. I mean, there were some weeks a car ride was like how she got out of the house, and it maybe only happened like 4 times a week,
Mhm.
just a 20-minute car ride. So we definitely had been in such a bad place, but we just kind of got through it just day by day.
Mhm.
And through a lot of prayer and a lot of faith, I would end up finding another protocol that might work, or it might
Right.
lead me to another doctor.
Mhm.
Um, my daughter, I would say, had the heaviest load because she also had a congenital load too,
Mhm.
on top of also being bit by ticks at a summer camp. So one of the things that we ended up doing that kind of like reduced her load is she actually did whole body hyperthermia at
Okay.
Santa Vive Medical Institute in Rosarita, Mexico. She was there for 2 weeks, and they kind of threw everything at it. Not just hyperthermia 2 times where they heat up your body to 107 degrees
Mhm.
and hold you there, but they also did like a couple of ozone sessions, hyperbaric chamber. She got IV antibiotics.
Mhm.
She got IV artesunate for her babesia. And that really helped kill off a lot of her load. But then we had to handle mold, and we
Mhm.
had to still handle the pans. She
Mhm.
also did IVIG, which I think stands for intravenous interglobulin therapy. We did it over a year,
Mhm.
and she really needed the antibodies of other donors to like rebuild her immune system. But today she's doing amazing. She's I don't know what constitutes remission, but she goes to school every day. She's doing amazing. She has new friends. I mean,
Mhm.
she's definitely appears to be living like that typical life of an 11th grader.
Right, right. So, do you all follow any sort of dietary protocol? Have you all eliminated the gluten and sugar and dairy as so many people have?
Yeah, gluten for sure.
Mhm.
I actually, before I was diagnosed, eliminated gluten probably, let me think, 12 years ago. And I saw immediate relief from my own brain fog and mental health issues. So when my kids were diagnosed with Lyme, I was like, we 100% have to be gluten free. We had already been doing it. Like I'd let my kids have gluten on the weekends type
Right,
thing. We all know that that's not really going to be beneficial given
right.
how the protein stays in your system or whatever.
Yeah.
So we are gluten free. And my kids were dairy free for a long time, and we just kind of slowly started reintroducing it here and there.
Mhm.
But the sugar's been really hard. I'm not gonna lie.
Oh, the
Sugar, we don't keep things like we don't ever buy soda. My kids don't drink soda.
yeah.
Um, and we don't eat cereals like sugary cereals or sugary snacks, like that kind of stuff we don't do.
Mhm.
But we still eat sugar. They're just eating like a gluten-free treat here and there once in a while. But
Yeah.
yeah, like the sugar we still do.
Yeah, the sugar is definitely by far been the most challenging for our family for sure.
Yeah.
I know my kids and they're like my son texted me from school the other day. He's like, the reason I have such trouble with sugar is because you didn't give it to us. I'm like, that's not true. I gave it to you. It just didn't look like donuts. They were organic donuts from Whole Foods. They look the same. But I'm like, you just have a problem with sugar. Your microbes are out of balance. Anyway, so how did you become an empowerment coach? I know, like, it's hard to raise, and, like having a daughter who's been diagnosed with Lyme. And when I look back and listen to your story, we've definitely had some moments where, uh, lots of anxiety, and I would say, I'm not sure, right? Where emotionally, she's been a little bit more challenging than, my son. And I don't recall any other tick bites. That's not to say, right? We just didn't know she had Lyme potentially, right? Or something else.
Right.
I don't know, right? But I know
Yeah.
that she, was diagnosed in April 2021 with Lyme disease. And it can be hard and wearing on a mom, right? And a dad when you have kids with, neurological challenges. I don't know if that's even the best word to use,
Yeah.
right? Or, these opportunities where it's challenging, or it's an opportunity for growth for the parents to like learn how to navigate, right? Is
Right.
what brought you, how did you become an empowerment coach?
Such a good question.
Right? Because you're trying to empower parents,
Yeah.
moms,
Yeah. Yeah.
on
So
how to be the best
it's
mom they
really,
can be.
it, yeah, it's really was the whole thing was birthed from my daughter because
Mhm.
truthfully, what happened was she was at therapy one day and she was just not making progress. And I told the therapist, I am so frustrated because I don't even think she wants to be happy ever. And
Mhm.
he was like, well, what do you think? He asks my daughter, do you want to be happy? And she's like, yes, I want to be happy. And the therapist asked my daughter, well, what would make you happy? And she said, well, I would be happy if my mom was happy. And
Mm.
I was like, I'm happy. I'm a happy person. And he was like, she doesn't think so. And I was like, you know what? I'm not happy. This has been such a hard, difficult, terrible, miserable life these last couple of years.
Mhm.
Um, and so I said, okay, so if I get happy, she'll be happy. And he's like, it looks like it. And I was like, okay, I'm just gonna try this just to see where this goes. Like I still kind of wasn't buying into it,
Mhm.
but I did recognize I was not a happy person.
Mhm.
So I started taking all of my focus off of making my children happy because
Mm.
it wasn't working.
Mhm.
And instead, what ends up happening is you're basically telling your children, I need you to be happy so I can be happy because you're making me miserable. Your situation, although it's not your fault, is really causing me pain. So could you just be happy and healthy so mommy can be happy and healthy?
Mm.
And this is like the message that we send, like totally unconsciously, this is happening. And so I took a big shift and I just started really exploring my own, I started being accountable to my
Mhm.
own personal happiness. And I started feeling happier. And that meant like, I'm like, well, what would make me happy? I'm like, you know what? I have all these stories of gratitude in my journal. I know that a lot of parents are also living this way. I'm going to share my story and create a podcast.
Mhm.
And that's how Very Happy Stories started the podcast.
Oh.
And the more I did the podcast, and then I started bringing on other storytellers and other moms, we would always end with gratitude. And that would make me happy. So there was like a huge shift then that started happening. And my happiness and my vibration and my accountability
Mhm.
to my own personal happiness, all of a sudden, my kids really started responding better to all their own treatment. Like I got off their back of like, fix yourself, be happy. And I went to myself,
Right.
inward.
And then
Um,
the ripple effect.
it's a huge ripple effect, but it has to come from a very authentic place.
Mhm.
And I think that a lot of mothers are so desperate, of course, to fix their children urgently
Oh,
because we have no ability to sit in this discomfort of our children suffering.
mhm.
So natural, so natural. But the way to get out of this cycle is to step back and really start working on healing yourself because every mama has healing to do.
Oh, yeah.
When you heal yourself, you really unlock your child. And
Right.
I've seen this work. And so now, so then moms started coming to me that, like, you always know other Lyme moms, they find you. Other PANS moms find me.
Mhm.
And they were finding me also through my podcast. And so they just want to talk with me and meet with me. And I just started mentoring other moms, not just about like all the things that work and all the doctors, but also like this whole different mindset shift. And over time, I just started creating modules
Mhm.
that resonated, that brought me results, and that brought results to dozens of other moms out there.
Right. So tell me about these modules. I know, it's funny. My mom would say, she would still say this, you're only happiest as your least happy child. Right. And
Right.
that doesn't work. Right.
No,
I mean,
it's such a disservice.
yeah. And then uh, to rely on, right? Anytime we're relying on something outside externally for our happiness, right? It does not work.
Right. But worse than that, Elizabeth, you're actually putting all this pressure on your child.
Yeah.
And that is not fair. And it's just a burden to put on them, especially when they're just trying to heal.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it is a burden. And then,
It's
and
a
like
huge
my mom,
burden.
I've heard this. Oh my gosh. Well, which one of us is the least happy? My sibling. No, I'm
Right.
just kidding. But,
Right.
uh,
It's really a recipe where there's no winner. There really isn't.
yeah,
And then your child starts masking, or they,
right.
it's just not authentic. So yeah, I'll tell you. So I have 6 modules, but I'm going to give you my top 3 and I'll just cover them briefly. And they're just basically inversions, right? So the first one is accountability. And I actually call this module the dance. And basically, all of us that are living this healing lifestyle with our children, our children are chronically ill, or we also might be chronically ill. There's a very secret unspoken dance dynamic that's happening in our home. And everybody has a part, especially if you have 2 kids, one might be the antagonist who never gets their way,
Mm,
that you're so triggered to please so quickly and if you don't, this child amps it up. And
right.
then you try to stand your ground. And the next thing you know, another child is involved. And then your spouse is just angry because nothing's getting accomplished. And you just have this chaos, right?
Yeah.
And I call that chaos the dance. And we are entangled in this dance 100 times a day. And it's not,
And really, we don't even know it.
you don't even know it.
Right.
And you cannot heal in that environment. And your children will not heal in that environment. So the very first thing to do is really observe the dance.
Mhm.
Less talking, more observing, and start recognizing, where are you participating in
Mm,
this dynamic?
mhm,
Can you hold yourself accountable?
mhm,
And a lot of moms get really triggered by this because it starts to make them feel like it's their fault. There's a lot of blame. I didn't create this.
mhm,
And it's not a blaming piece. Even if your participation was like 30% of the dynamic,
mhm.
that's still 30% that you can change.
Right.
That's still 30% that you can insert a new dynamic,
Mhm.
right? Or
Yeah.
respond differently. I know for myself, I was like 70% of the dynamic. So that's why when I started shifting, I saw such greater results because I had a significant participation role in the dance.
Right. Yeah. When you explain this, I think about two people dancing,
Yeah.
right? And in order for the dance to change, somebody's got to change the steps, right? The feet, the arm movement, whatever, whoever's leading, right, has to change if we're going from the tango to East Coast swing,
Yeah.
right? And
Yep.
they're very different dances.
Yes. And just like a dance, the other person is gonna be like, what are you doing? No, no. And they're going to try to shift back. You're going to start responding in a different way,
Mhm,
but you're not going to be playing by the rules of the dance, and people are not going to like it.
mhm,
And they're going to start like getting louder,
mhm.
and you just have to stand your ground that we
Right.
are going to do the waltz. We're not
Right.
doing the cha-cha anymore. We're
Right.
doing the waltz, and you have to stand your ground, with love and empathy and compassion. And that's what I'm there for, to help mentor moms through that dance transition.
Okay. Good. And
Yes.
we all need that. I mean, because I know you can revert back real easy, right? Without that accountability, even, I mean, it sounds like it's a group that you work with
Yes.
and some
Small group.
other moms or other people that, that you can at least find that support with community.
Yes. 100%.
You're
And
making,
then the next module I roll into is, the power of neutrality.
okay.
And that's really big when you're transitioning from, these roles in your dance. And the power of neutrality, pretty much briefly, is about this. So much that our children are going through, even in just like the day-to-day stuff, is actually neutral. And we so quickly, as the mama bear, start attaching an emotion to
Mm,
what we're seeing, and it's either good or bad. And depending on where our focus is and what type of place we're in a mindset place, we can just be too negative. And sometimes we're just being like phony baloney positive. But
right.
really, there's so much that's just neutral.
Hmm. Hmm.
And you have to start seeing some of these incidents as not good, not bad, but just like, okay, today his legs hurt.
Mm,
Okay. And you're taking in information. We're still neutral here. And you explore that, like, okay, I'm so sorry that's happening to you. What do you need from me? Do you want a hug? It's like, it's like, it's not, you're taking away the urgent, quick fix it mode, desperate fix it mode. You're taking
yeah.
all of that pressure off, and you're just really coming to the situation with a neutral vibration.
Right. Okay.
Does that
Yeah.
make sense?
Yes, absolutely. Because I know I can go into taking on all kinds of feelings as a mom of my
Right.
kids, right?
Right.
And you do just want to fix it. I do, right?
Yeah.
It's, like knowing that's kind of like something I tend to lean towards is the fixer, right?
Yes.
And that's something I brought into, right? Even probably as a
Right.
child, right? It's sort of just
Right.
transitioned over. But that's not always. And sometimes in doing that, I know that it, so, it not intentionally causes harm, right? But it can cause,
Yes.
I don't hate the word harm, right? But it's not
It
necessarily
doesn't make things better.
it's right for the growth.
Right.
Hmm.
Right. It doesn't, there's so many times when we're just coming at the situation of like, I need to fix this quickly because I am so uncomfortable. Like
Yeah.
watching you in pain, I'm in pain. So
Hmm.
get out of your pain so I can be out of my pain.
Yes.
When we keep coming to it from that place, it always escalates the whole situation. So the
Yeah.
power of neutrality is really about de-escalating,
Hmm.
or at least keeping it neutral and
Right.
not making it uptick, because so much of our world, when we're healing our children, everything is on the uptick.
Right.
It
Yeah.
is.
Hmm.
Right. Right. So that is, and so we kind of unpack neutrality, how to practice neutrality, support each other, share stories, share wins, examples. And then the next thing is about the rock. And we all know that so much of the healing journey is about having the ability to feel safe,
Right.
right? And in our homes, especially when we have Lyme families, nobody's feeling safe. The children are not feeling safe because like this is happening and they can't express it. It's terrifying. And then the parents are terrified. And so there is this place where the moms really need to do this very specific work. And the work is transforming into a safe harbor.
Hmm.
Be the rock for your child. You don't want them coming to you and then you freak out. And now you're just upticking them. You have to become a very empowered figure that they come to you with pain and discomfort and problems, and you be a safe harbor to hold that space for them
Hmm.
with empathy and compassion and love, and not just put out fires. we're always firefighters, but like to sit in that discomfort with them and
Right.
hold them in that discomfort. And
Mhm.
that's why practicing neutrality is so important. But to really become that rock, you have to start healing your wounds and feel safe yourself. All mothers need to do the work to feel safe so that they can like energetically hold that space for their children and be that safe harbor. So you be a rock. A rock doesn't say anything. A rock just sits there, you
Right.
know, and
Foundation.
that's like vibrationally, that's what you have to hold for them.
So then your modules build one on the other.
They do.
Okay. And
Yeah. But
and
those are the first three.
okay. And then what are the last three called?
Sure. Okay. So the last three is, I call this one reptilian brain. And it is because so much of dealing with our children in this space is really based on shame and fear of judgment.
Okay.
There's so much shame and fear of judgment in this place. And we don't realize it, but we actually pass so much shame onto our children. And when we do that, it makes it very difficult for them to heal. So we have to kind of deprogram ourselves of the fear of judgment and of shame so that we can give them the permission to deprogram themselves of shame as well. And so I call it reptilian brain is because I basically do this whole background on where shame comes from.
Mhm.
And it's a protective mechanism from when we were like ancient cavemen times. When so you had to search in order to survive, you had to be in a tribe.
Right.
If you do something bad, the tribe kicks you out
Mhm.
and then you will not survive. Like
Mm.
man alone could not survive.
Right.
That's why we feel it and on like a cellular level, so unsafe when we're embarrassed or ashamed. And then people use shame as a tactic to get you in line and for you to conform.
Right.
That's the backstory on shame. And we go over a lot about it. So just having the awareness of where shame comes from, you
Yeah.
start recognizing that you don't need this program anymore.
Right.
Right. And you can start, first of all, you can stop using shame on
Mhm.
your children, um, and let go of the fear of judgment so that you can progress, in your healing journey.
Um, I mean, it makes so much sense. As a mom, I know that different things have come up along the way, right? Mine are
Yeah.
20 and 17, and as they grow and they experience things, I realize I'm learning too and trying to unpack all that. My gosh, it may take a lifetime, right?
Yeah. Oh, it's huge.
I
It's
mean,
such a practice.
yeah,
One of the things that we shame kids from is just even this concept. Hurry up, get your shoes on, hurry up, take all your pills. No, you have to take your pills. You have no, we're gonna be late. Just who cares if you're late?
right.
It's like a fear of
Oh,
judgment of being late.
oh my goodness. Yes. I mean, when my son played basketball,
Yeah,
and mom, if I'm not early, I'm late. And this is something the coaches, right,
I know.
drilled into his poor little mind. I'm like, kid,
I know. I
it's
know. I
okay if
know.
you're 5 minutes late. But then there's that fear, well, I won't get playing time if I'm late.
Yes.
There's all these things. And so it's like, it's not even just from us, but the more we can hold the space for them, right? Then maybe
Yes.
where they are able to hold that space when
Right.
they are no longer under our wing or out there in the world
Right.
for themselves, right? Because
Right.
they can definitely get mixed messages.
Yeah, you can get mixed messages, but especially when your child is healing, you know what I mean? You just
Yeah,
got to give them so much more grace. I understand, like with sports and everything, but I just feel like even in the everyday stuff, that like if we can just like back off and clear
yeah,
our plates from all these expectations, I think it just lends itself to more space to
right.
heal and
Yeah.
feel safe.
And then they can
And
feel so stressed about having to get
yes,
out the door or
yes. Yes, it is so stressful. And then the next one is about unpacking grief. I call it the purge, and there's special ways that we do that because there is so much grief in our families, and we have to unload that. And then the the last one is just about living your best life. I think the recipe to healing your children, like I said at the beginning, must include your piece of what brings you joy,
Yeah.
what brings you happiness.
Mhm.
We always think, once my kids are healed, I'm going to do all these amazing things for myself. But
Right,
you actually have to do those things now. And
right,
that is a key component to healing your children.
right. And it's like you give them permission to heal as you heal, right? They
Yes.
see it. Mom's healing. Mom's having fun. She's playing. She's finding her joy. That means I can do it too. It's okay.
Yes, and they want to see their mom happy.
Mhm.
It brings children great sadness to know that they're making their moms sad
Yeah.
because they have Lyme or
Mhm.
PANS. And so it is like our duty to find our joy and
Mhm.
find our happiness and light yourself up. It also gives you energy, to deal
Right.
with the high intensity life.
Mhm.
So creating space to explore your passions is a huge priority.
Yeah. I know that I think a lot of moms, they forget that, and then they hit 40, and their kids are growing up and they're getting older, like, "Oh my gosh, what am I gonna do next?" Right? Because their
Yeah,
kids are no longer even needing them for carpool, right? And so they have this
right.
extra little bit of free time. They better know what they like to do, right? Hobbies
Yes.
get put away. And well, I know we have we're coming to an end. I know you have a group starting in January. Please
Yes.
tell us, a little bit more about that. Share any final thoughts that you have, or
Yes.
where
Thank you
to
so
find you on
much.
your podcast.
Yes. So on my website, Very Happy Stories, is all the information to my podcast. You can find links for my mentoring. I'm also on Instagram at Liza's Very Happy Stories. I'm very active there. But I will be doing this new mentoring support group, starts January 9. And we are going to unpack all these modules over 4 weeks together as a group. And I actually show up on an app, a separate app, to keep mentoring, keep supporting, keep motivating everybody as they're going through these transitions.
Okay, awesome. And they can find all of that information at your website, veryhappystories.com.
Yes.
And then
Yes.
probably, I would imagine, in your bio up under on your Instagram page as
Yes.
well. Right?
That's actually a really good place to go, is the
Thank
bio
you.
on my Instagram.
Okay. Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Liza. I appreciate all of that, all the stories and information that you've shared with us today. I hope the audience will go and check out Liza's website and also her Instagram page, listen to her podcast. And thank you so much for joining us. Have a great day.